Colleagues, can I get your attention, please? I'd like to bring this meeting to order. So, pursuant to Standing Order 81-4 in the main estimates for 2016-17, in front of you, you have the whole description of the rationale for our meeting. And to start off dealing with the estimates, we've invited both Minister Bibeau and Minister Dion to be our guests and our witnesses. So the objective of the exercise this afternoon is to have a discussion about the estimates and questions, comments, and opening statements by the ministers, and then questions by members of the committee. So with further ado, I want to turn the floor over. I think, is it Mr. Dion is going to start? So I'll turn it over to Mr. Dion, and after his presentation, we'll go right to Mr. Bibeau and into questions. Mr. Dion.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you for inviting me, along with my colleague, Minister Bibeau, to speak to this very important committee and to talk about the 2016-2017 main estimates. We are joined today by various senior officials. Peter, who is Minister Bibeau's Deputy Minister. Arun, who has a very impressive title, Assistant Deputy Minister and Chief Financial Officer, Corporate Planning, Finance and Information Technology. Which means that he's the expert. He's the guy who knows everything. On my left, Mr. Daniel Jean, who is still my Deputy Minister and still will be for a little while. Given how excellent he is, the Prime Minister stole him from me, and he's going to be working for the Prime Minister. But he's done a lot of work with my future Deputy Minister, who is also very good. And I've been assured that he's very talented. So I'd like to thank Mr. Jean for the excellent work that he did under the previous government and under the current government. This is an important meeting today, so Minister Bibeau and I will try not to speak too long so that we can dedicate most of our time to these very important documents and this very important democratic exercise. It's a very important exercise for openness and transparency. Sometimes it's difficult to be transparent because this is a very technical document, and there are a lot of things that I will do to help try to clarify that.
Represent the department's projected expenditures for the current fiscal year. But I should note here for the committee that, given the timeline for preparing and tabling the main estimates each year and proximity of this to the budget speech, most budget announcements will instead follow in the supplementary estimates rather than the main estimates. So we will have plenty of opportunities throughout the year to exercise parliamentary oversight of these expenditures. That said, there are a few key areas I would like to highlight with you now before turning it over to Minister Bibeau. The department had a net decrease of its budget of 11.3 million if you look at these estimates over the last year's main estimate. So 11.3 out of a budget of roughly $1.5 billion. So how can you explain this decrease? This is what I will do now. The decrease is mainly due to the program renewal schedules for both the Stabilization and Reconstruction Task Force, acronym is START, and Global Peace and Security Fund. These sunsetting programs appear as a drop of $130 million in these main estimates. But new funding was announced in budget 2016. This new funding of $450 million over the next 3 years to renew the fund will be brought before Parliament as part of the supplementary estimates process. I hope you follow me. There are also a few other smaller items that account for the differences between this year and last year. These include initiatives related to sunsetting funding for security upgrades and real property projects, as well as other technical adjustments that are contained in these main estimates. Also, our operations at home and missions abroad, like so many other sectors across our economy, have not been immune to currency fluctuations. As a result, there is an increase in $62 million in the cost of payments made from Canada in foreign currencies and around $40 million for fluctuations affecting payments by our missions abroad. Taken together, these account for the vast majority of the variance you see in the estimates before you. When looking at the main estimates by program, you will note that there has been a decrease in both international security and democratic development and international development. For the former, this reflects the sunsetting of funding of the START program I just mentioned. And as I mentioned, new funding was announced in Budget 2016 and will be sought through the supplementary estimates process. The variance with respect to the International Development Program reflects the increased demand for humanitarian assistance, and you can see the resulting shift from this program to the Humanitarian Assistance Program. But Madame Bibeau will have more to say about that. J'espère que j'ai un peu...
I hope that I managed to anticipate at least some of your questions and that I managed to make this document a little bit clearer. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Monsieur Dion and
Thank you, Mr. Dion.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, membres du comité.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I'm very pleased to be with you today to talk to you about the main estimates. First of all, I'd like to remind you, as Mr. Dion said earlier, that the estimates are prepared in November, so they don't include any of the government's new commitments. The main estimates include $3.8 billion in grants and contributions, of which $2.8 billion is dedicated to international development and humanitarian assistance programs. These amounts are disbursed through our multilateral and bilateral agreements and through partnership with recognized and experienced Canadian organizations. $1 billion is earmarked for payments to international organizations. It's important to note that the main estimates also include all administrative expenses. So that does not include what probably interests you the most, official development assistance and the international assistance envelope. As was the case in previous years, the main estimates includes an envelope for international assistance worth $5 billion. According to the government's priorities, this sum is increased from year to year. Based on preliminary results, the 2015 budget was increased by an amount of $270 million. Without counting this additional envelope, which is still available, the 2016 budget allows for an additional amount of $256 million over 2 years. Furthermore, as you know, we are currently reviewing our policies and financial framework. The 2016 budget is already announcing an increase in international development funding starting in 2017 as per our 5-year plan. Officially, the official budget for humanitarian assistance is around $320 million. But given the current global context, significant sums are transferred each year from the development budget to the humanitarian assistance budget. In 2015, $480 million was transferred, giving a total of $800 million for humanitarian assistance. There is also a financial framework that allows us to deal with this situation. There's also a crisis fund. This is $200 million plus whatever was left over from the previous year, and this is reserved for exceptional humanitarian crises. It's also important to note that international development assistance projects are made possible through various partners. For example, there are contributions to large banks and international funds. There are proposals that respond directly to our initiatives in target countries. and there are locally administered initiatives in foreign countries.
We refer to the International Assistance Envelope, or IAE, is the main planning instrument for international development and humanitarian assistance at the federal government level. It includes expenditure from Global Affairs Canada, the International Development Research Centre, and the International Assistance Programme Finance, and the International Assistance Programme from Finance Canada. It also includes official development assistance, ODA, eligible and non-ODA eligible programming, for example, security programs. The Official Development Assistance, ODA, is a measure and guideline for capturing spending on international development and humanitarian assistance as established by OECD's Development Assistance Committee. It includes expenditures funded from outside the IAE, such as expenditures by the Department of National Defense, Public Health Agency of Canada, Environment and Climate Change Canada, Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada, as well as funding from Canadian provinces and municipalities. Based on provisional data, in 2015, Canada ranked 8 out of 28 in terms of ODA volume, and 14 out of 28 in terms of ODA GNI ratio, 0.28%. In 2014, Canada ranked 10th out of 28 in terms of ODA volume and 16 out of 28 in terms of ODA GNI ratio. So that is an outline of some of the cold numbers and some of the key definitions. I would like now to very briefly outline some of the development challenges that they are addressing and how this connects to my mandate on refocusing our international assistance to support the poorest and the most vulnerable, including the fragile states. While major gains have been made in reducing extreme poverty around the world in the last 2 decades, today there still remain over 700 million people who live below the international poverty line of $1.90 a day. Conflicts are becoming more complex and difficult to resolve and are driving levels of forced migration not seen since the Second World War. Worldwide, 1 in every 122 persons is now either a refugee, internally displaced, or seeking asylum. The humanitarian response system is straining under tremendous pressure. In the last 5 years alone, the number of people needing basic, life-saving humanitarian assistance has risen from 53 million to over 87 million. Canada is a top humanitarian donor, and we remain committed to meeting the needs of those affected by humanitarian crises. Last year, Canada provided $800 million in humanitarian assistance. Canada responded to communities affected by conflict and acute food insecurity in 52 countries and by natural disasters in 23 countries. Our government strategy for engagement in Iraq, Syria, Jordan, and Lebanon includes $1.1 billion over 3 years, of which $840 million is for humanitarian and development assistance. This is the first time Canada is providing multi-year humanitarian assistance. Our recent announcement of $100 million for humanitarian projects in Syria and neighboring countries is further testament to this commitment. When we last met, I outlined at length my priorities for you, as well as speaking about the policy review, which I will be officially announcing next week. So I will restate simply my overarching focus on empowering women and girls globally and protecting their rights. As you know, this is not only a goal on its own, but essential for achieving all other goals. Our decisions will be evidence-based. We will focus on effective indicators and sound monitoring so that we can accurately track results, and we will use on innovative approaches to make our dollars go further. This includes working with new partners, exploring different funding mechanisms, and ensuring that successful results are replicated and scale up where appropriate. Finally, in addressing international development and humanitarian assistance issues, no one political party has a moratorium on good ideas. There is a great deal of experience around this table, and I look forward to working with all of you, either as a committee or as an individual basis, on these important issues. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bibeau and colleagues. So we'll go right to the questions, and we'll start with Mr. Clement.
Thank you. How much time do I have?
6 minutes.
6 minutes. First question, thank you very much, ministers, for being here, and deputies as well. First question, what's the status of the consolidation of office presence in Paris?
Je vais demander à Monsieur Haroun de donner ça.
Okay, the Paris project is underway. There was considerable design work that was done last year. We are using an innovative public-private partnership approach to deliver that project, and we're well underway in the design work. We've secured the approvals from the city on that, and to this point, it looks like that will be completed on time and will be a successful
full steam ahead then?
Yes.
Okay. Second question, I notice I think under my list is table 140, there's a significant decrease in the North Atlantic Treaty Organization civil administration budget for about $14 million. Can someone explain that?
Yes, that's the assessed contribution for NATO.
Yeah.
So those assessments are based on the bills that we anticipate that each of those international organizations provide us at the beginning of the year. So again, that's our initial estimate of what NATO's budget is. If it gets revised or reflected or adjusted because of currency fluctuations, those funds are sought through the supplementary.
So there's no cutback in services or anything in that regard. Next question, Minister Dion, you've spoken obviously openly and proudly of re-engaging with Iran and reopening at some point down the line the embassy in Tehran. Has there been a cost on this endeavor in terms of cost to Canadian taxpayers, added costs in terms of protecting our diplomatic personnel in Tehran, and is that included in the increase of the $24 million to implement security projects on missions abroad, or would that be over and above that amount?
Yes, it would be. But we did not cost it yet, dear colleague, because we are not there in our plan to re-engage in Iran.
So there would be supplementary estimates or some other fashion reporting back to Parliament on that. In terms of for Madame Ministre, obviously one of the signature projects of the Conservative government prior to you was the initiative on maternal, newborn, and child health. And I'm just wondering, obviously that was designed to accelerate progress on women's and children's health in developing countries. I'm wondering, obviously you're going through a review of all of the projects, but is the budget the same for that until the review is done?
Yes, absolutely. We want to build on the previous MNCH program. I have already explained, I think the other time, that we just want to enlarge it, but women and girls will remain a priority. And you have engaged $3.5 million to this project, to this old program. When I came into office, more or less 3.1 was already engaged. So I've just informed these partners that we may have discussions without changing anything, but just have discussions about the range of services they are offering.
Sure.
And well, we will pursue this. This is something that we want to build on and just improve and put more focus on.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Final question for this round, just relating to, and I ask ministers this question because I'm not quite sure which budget it is part of, but obviously your government pledged an additional $2.65 billion by 2020 on a cash basis to address climate change in developing countries. And I'm just wondering what measures are in place to assess whether the money goes to its intended purpose, that we avoid any corruption issues in some countries, and basically what are the terms and conditions attached to the distribution of these funds?
You're talking about the 2.65 to climate change, is that
Yes,
it?
yes.
Okay. So we are working in collaboration with the Department of Environmental and Climate Change with Minister McKenna to design more precisely where we are gonna invest this amount of money. A part of it will be through different loans, another part will be for grants and contributions. And if I just come back to one of my priority, which is building on the previous sustainable economic growth, I call it for now sustainable and green economic growth, because the idea is really to focus on everything related to helping the communities to be more resilient in face of climate change, and so it will be focusing on the agriculture and energy sector, for example.
Oui, mais c'est important d'avoir donc.
But throughout this process, we have to ensure that there's proper accounting for each project.
Before, during, and after each and every project we finance. It's already very well established, and it's still very important to us, but we are not at this stage for now. We are just looking at how we are gonna invest this amount of money, but
Okay.
we're still very committed to due
Thank you.
diligence.
Thank you.
Mr. Clinton, we'll now go to Mr. Sidhu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Minister Bevo and Mr. Dion, to be here today. My question is, we have Canadians all over the world working as our staff in our embassies. Our mission is not to support only our staff, but all Canadians abroad in their work and travels. These Canadians represent our Canadian perspective in their good work. I understand the security of our people is the utmost importance to you and to your department, and I can see some changes in estimates accordingly. Can you talk a little bit more about the steps that are taken in these estimates to ensure security of our embassy and other Canadians working abroad?
Thank you, dear colleague. That's a very, very crucial issue that you raised. If there's something that may stop my deputy and myself to sleep the night, and in addition of the consular cases that you know, it's the security of our men and women who are working for Canada abroad in many difficult conditions, and they are very courageous, and we need to do everything to support them. Mr. Clement mentioned that there are in the budget plan 24 million that is earmarked to increase the new money to implement new security projects and upgrades at our missions abroad. Budget 2010 allocated for 7 years, $450.2 million over 7 years. So it will be over in 2017. And at that time, that means that during the current year, with the Minister of Finance, we need to look at that very, very carefully, because it's a big, big, big concern that we may have. For now, we are doing a lot. We are doing everything we can. So we'll see if there are room for improvement. Certainly it is. We are investing $153.7 million for the security of the team's mission, $247.5 million for upgrading the infrastructure, and $49 million in equipment and systems. We will review these measures, information system and properties through rigorous risk assessment analysis so that the security of Canada's diplomats is not compromised. That's a top priority.
Thank you so much. Minister Bevo, you mentioned that there's going to be some more funding coming to these estimates. Is there any timeline? When are you coming back with those changes?
Well, we're going through the review first to prioritize, to make our choices. And but I'm not. Would you just be more precise in your question?
Well, you mentioned in your statement that you have some changes into the estimates, and they're not into these estimates. And I was wondering, when can we expect those changes?
So we are starting with the reference level. We already know from the budget that we have an additional budget of 258 for 2 years. And there's some funds available through the supplementary estimates budget. So it's really, we will see it while during the year when we have to ask more funds in the supplementary estimate. But maybe Arun, you may explain.
So any new initiative that comes along during the fiscal year will be reflected in supplementary estimates. So we anticipate, there's 3 sets of supplementary estimates, A, B, and C. A is usually in late spring, B is early winter, and C is towards the end of the fiscal year. So at one of those intervals, any of the new funding for international development that was talked about in the budget will be reflected in one of those supplementary estimates.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
With the 2 minutes left, Mr. Miller.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Minister Dion, the UN Convention on Torture mean that they should not be subject to any suffering in order to obtain information or confessions or to punish or intimidate Kakwan. It also deals with poor treatment of prisoners and inmates. This is always illegal. Minister, this week you signed the optional protocol, and I would like to know what the signature of this protocol means. Will it enable us to achieve our objective of eliminating torture? Thank you, colleague. I haven't yet signed the protocol. You've made a commitment to sign it. Yes, I would like to, but that requires a great deal of preparation. This committee will have a lot of work to do to that end. I announced that Canada would like to sign on to the optional protocol on the UN Torture Convention. It ceases to be optional in Canada. The protocol, as you said, is an important agreement to forbid torture and ensure that this is implemented and that governments will be held responsible for their actions. Signing on to this protocol means working with many departments as well as ours. We have to also deal with the Aboriginal governments and provinces. We need to do this. I think we have delayed this too long as a country. The time has come to do so. We have to ensure that here in Canada we have all the necessary protection against this horror, this torture. But it's always difficult to push other countries if we're not setting an example ourselves. So if we want problematical countries to sign on to the protocol, it's difficult to request them to do so if we don't do so ourselves. So this will be a very important aspect that we will sign on to. Mr. Obey. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much for coming, particularly the 2 ministers who must have a busy workload. My question is for both of you. Sometimes it's difficult to to distinguish between who does what in global affairs and international development. You will recall that the former government had withdrawn Canada's participation from the UN Convention on Desertification. We did this after withdrawing from Kyoto, and in reviewing the budget, I don't see any contributions to this program. Is Canada not going back to the table? Is it not signing on to this convention? All I could say is that I hear you. I said the same thing when I was in the opposition, and now that we're in the government, we can now take action. We'll take a look at this. And we will soon, in the next few weeks or months, we will make a decision. This is an important issue. You're quite right. Desertification is a real problem, and it affects a large portion of the world. And people are not able to look after their own needs when they live on these lands that are now turning into deserts. So, yes, I thank you for raising that question, Mr. Aubin. I'll wait for your answer. I'm eager to hear your answer because the desert spreads more and more as long as the longer we don't take action on another issue, an international file. What's happening with our participation? I wasn't able to really understand the numbers with respect to Canadian participation in the anti-landmine agreement. Where can we find this in the budget? What are the figures attached to Canadian participation? We're looking for the figures now. I spoke about this at the international conference. I really emphasize the fact that Canada will now play a more active role than it has in the past. I can give you an example. In Colombia, we're looking at what we can do. Thank you very much. Perhaps you could send the figures in later on. My next question is for Mrs. Bibeau. In the RPP for Canada, it is stated that the minister will supporting the implementation of sustainable development for the UN. My question is, what budget resources has Canada earmarked? Is there a specific budget for this, for implementing these objectives, or is this through various other programs and using existing budgets? So we're simply take into account these various objectives. For the international development, okay. This is part and parcel of our review. This will become much more clear in our 5-year plan that will be published soon. But for the time being, we're looking at our priorities, and this does line up with our other priorities. So it's in existing budgets. There won't be a special envelope or budget set aside for sustainable development. For 2017, I can't presume what we're going to do because we're still looking into the matter. But very quickly, off the top of my head, I would think that this would be integrated because every action we take helps us to meet our sustainable development objectives. So a distinct budget, I think that would be a little bit difficult. So with international development and sustainable development and environment, there are amounts that are earmarked to assist developing countries, enabling them to participate in the quest for solutions. Do you have special funding for these countries? Is it $2.7 million? Does that include this as well? $2.5 million is earmarked for actions or $1 billion for activities and to help countries become more resilient to climate change and thereby reducing greenhouse gases. And out of this amount, is that an additional amount? So we are now reviewing matters within the department, and we are working with the Department of the Environment. We're going through all of this. We've made some commitments, but we're going to continue with our analysis. And there is additional monies that's going to be earmarked for this, but what's important is the new money. So I'll let you get to work on that, and we'll see each other another time to have further clarification. Thank you very much.
Madame la Ministre, le comité...
Madam Minister, the committee heard many witnesses talk about peace and security, and it was said that departments have stopped providing funding to NGOs, regardless of whether they're in Canada or in developing nations. So obviously these NGOs are experiencing a great deal of problems as a result. Are you going to be studying this issue during program review at Global Affairs? Absolutely, yes. Yes. One of the objectives that I'm looking at is that I would like to get Canadians to recommit to international assistance. I think that Canadians don't have a good understanding of the objectives of international development, and I think that small organizations have received less aid in the past. As for the issue of how we can work with them, I won't talk about the funding for the time being. I haven't got to that point yet, but this is part and parcel of our discussions with the organizations and part of our program reform. So yes, we are open to this. How can we get Canadian NGOs more involved? How can we get small and medium-sized businesses involved? and there's a lot of interest in local initiatives as well. So we can work with local NGOs in the countries.
It was very valuable. Really, obviously appreciate your testimony. The issue of Iran has come up already, but I'm interested in the issue in general policy terms, particularly because it's so important for Canadian foreign policy these days. Monsieur Ministre, as you know, yesterday, Ahmed Shahid, the UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights in Iran, spoke to a Senate committee. In his view, and I quote, engagement with Iran and continued focus on human rights are not mutually exclusive realities. This view obviously takes seriously the notion that a dialogue between states is vital for advancing human rights. Minister, can you speak about why this government, under the leadership of the Prime Minister and yourself, has taken a different approach in our relations with Iran? In particular, I'm interested in how might this help Canada meaningfully raise human rights concerns to the regime in Tehran?
It's because, dear colleague, this government is convinced that engagement is better than isolation, that Canada has a role to play, and if you're not there, you don't play a role. Doesn't mean that we should be in a country closed eyes. We should have open eyes. We should be very careful. And also, we believe in multilateralism. Let's say sanctions. Sanctions are effective if they are collective. If a country stops to trade and the others are trading, it will be barely seen in the country that is the target of the sanction, but it will affect a lot the country that decided to stop the links, to close the channels with the country. You have a lot of exchanges between Iranian Canadians and Iran. We have an opportunity to improve the situation in this country. There is some political parties that are close to us and want to see a more liberal society in the philosophical sense of the word, not partisan sense. Thanks God, as I said, that Canada was in Iran at the end of the 70s to rescue the U.S. hostages. We have a role to play, and our allies are asking us to do so. And there's something that I find completely incoherent in the policy of the former government, that is, you're out of Iran, but when you need to, because you really need to address an issue in Iran, you use a friendly country that was Italy, that is still Italy, and we need to thank Italy. That means that Italy stays in Iran, and we use Italy. But we get out of Iran and saying everybody should get out of Iran. So why are you using Italy? Do you see the incoherency? And I think we should stop to do that. And we'll see how we may improve the situation in order to help the people of Iran, Canadian interest, the interest of Israel, the interest of all our allies to make progress. And we will continue to sponsor the UN resolution on the situation of human rights in Iran, something that Canada is doing since I think the beginning of several years, during liberal and conservative governments. So we'll continue to do so. We have a lot of credibility to do so, especially when we'll improve our capacity to understand the society of Iran of today and to see which room we may find for improvement and which deterioration we need to denounce.
I think it runs counter to the kind of instinctual approach that some have adopted in the past, unfortunately. You know, we have a regime, we disagree with it, and therefore let's isolate ourselves from it. What you're saying runs completely counter to that, and I think it's a very promising development, frankly.
Yes, this being said, collective sanctions may work. It worked in South Africa. We have collective sanctions on Iran today to be sure that the militarization of their nuclear system, the nuclear capacity, will not exist in order to denounce their ballistic, les essais balistiques. And we do it with our allies to be sure that Iran know that they have a behavior to avoid about any deterioration. About Russia is the same. We need to support Ukraine, but for that we need to be involved. If you're not involved, if Russia is somewhere and you have the empty chair, Canada is penalized, but not Russia. So this kind of incoherent and irrational policy should stop, and we should use all the capacity we have as a parliament, as a government, as a great country to see improvements about human rights and national interest and peace process. Canada must be a peace builder. In order to be a peace builder, we need to be there.
Well, that's the end of the first round, so we'll now go to the second round, and we'll go to Mr. Sani.
Thank you very much for all being here. Madame Bibeau, Minister Bibeau, this question is for you. Like all members on this committee, I think we were greatly saddened by the earthquake in Ecuador, and it was very good to see the government respond in their time of need. And in being a new MP, I'm a little bit curious about procedure and protocol of how your department gets the funding it needs to ensure that we're able to send aid when and where it is needed. And with natural disasters, they can strike at any time, any place, anywhere, and without warning. So it's very difficult to put that into the budget. So how do you allocate the funding, and can you just give us an insight of how the money gets appropriated, and what the formula is, what the protocol is, how you decide how much to give?
Yes. So, well, every year, at the end of the year, more or less, we get the appeals from the major international organizations that provide very urgent humanitarian assistance. So we contribute once a year to these major organizations, so they are in a position to respond right away when something happens. It may take a day or two that we get some information, and then we will make. Actually, we were, depending, because I have other different examples in my mind. So sometimes we give a little amount right away to these, in addition to such organization, but the main important thing is that we are waiting for the call from these organizations. And depending on the capacity of the country, depending on the call we receive, depending on our proximity, I should say, with the country, we have a fair share that we normally contribute to a country. And for example, in the case of Ecuador, we first gave $1 million as a quick response. We sent a team in the field formed of 3 members of Global Affairs Canada and 3 members of National Defense. They went there to evaluate the situation, to make recommendations. The embassy put $100,000 in addition to it, because from the local initiative fund, and then our team, further to the recommendations of our team and the appeal from the international organization, we increase our contribution to $2 million. And in terms of proportion with other natural disaster, it's more or less always the same fair share that we contribute to a country. In the case of Ecuador, they will also get the l'hôpital de campagne de la Croix-Rouge. I don't know how you say it in English, but
Crossfield Hospital.
Crossfield Hospital?
Thank you. And it will stay there after the action of La Croix-Rouge. So this is more or less the way it works to decide how much we give.
Just to follow up to that, and this is maybe for Minister Dion, you mentioned earlier in your commentary about 24 million more being funded for security. And the question I have is, I know security in terms of, with 177 mission points abroad in 109 countries, security is tricky. The point the question, or the point I would like to highlight is, sometimes you could have a natural disaster in that country.
Yep.
The infrastructure system in that country may not be the greatest to begin with, but when you have a natural disaster, it could further deteriorate. How are you able to compensate for that, especially if Canadians are living in that zone, or if Canadians need access to an embassy or a mission in that country that has undergone that natural disaster?
Oui. But I may. The budget of Madame Bibeau is including this kind of risk in order for us to have the capacity to find the fund rapidly when you have a disaster. Is the way we work.
And we also have what we call the crisis pool. This is an amount of $200 million per year that we have, and if we still have some funds left from the previous year, it goes in addition to this $200 million. And this is a fund that we have a very quick access to, and I even have a very a special authorization to proceed for very urgent needs.
Part of the $24 million increase that you mentioned, will some of that be going to cybersecurity, and in what way?
Part of the budget is about to improve our systems, indeed. So the 24 million, so I don't think it's targeted to a specific aspect. It's part of the 7 years plan that has been identified by the government in 2010, and will continue until 2017. And at that time, we'll see how we may change the allocation if we consider that one aspect has not been developed as much as the others.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Kent.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Minister, for your appearance. Both ministers for your appearance today. I won't rise to respond to my honourable colleague on the other side with regards to foreign policy differences of past and previous governments, but I do have one question on Iran, and that's, I wonder, can you tell us just how many CIMA Iran sanctions, authorization, exemptions have you signed since taking office, and for what Canadian companies?
We would have to provide that in writing.
I'm told that we don't have that with us today, but if you ask the question, we will look at that and we'll see which answer we may give to you later.
So, and I ask that as an honest question, simply given the outreach for commercial opportunities in Iran, and knowing that to do that you would have to authorize with the Iran Exemption Authority.
Yeah, but if it's military, we cannot. We have still sanctions.
I understand that, but I also understand there's at least one Canadian aerospace company that has been talking a pretty aggressive game about attempting to engage.
What do you mean?
Bombardier.
Yes, aggressive. They want to be in the competition, certainly.
Yes. Can I ask if you signed an authorization for them to avoid the sanctions?
My deputy will want to intervene now.
Just following the implementation day, where a lot of our likely-minded adjusted the sanctions because of the joint agreement, there were a number of sanctions that were removed.
Yes.
So some of the competitive interests in certain sectors that you're talking may not be subject to sanctions anymore. There are some areas where clearly sanctions are still there, and the minister just mentioned them. Military. At the same time, with that, we also tightened the ballistic things, and there are certain goods that can be used for dual goods, which are still subject to export control. And I think that's what you're asking. But I just want to clarify that with the adjustment of the sanctions, there are certain sectors which are not risk of diversion, where now companies can operate.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, I understand, and I know this is not official, but that Canada is proposing that, in line with the Prime Minister's intention to broaden peacekeeping operations, Canada is proposing to assume the lead military role in the Haiti Stabilization Force, a military force, MINUSTA, which until now has been directed by Brazil, but Canada, I understand, is proposing to assume control by this fall. My questions would be, have you estimated what those costs of such a peacekeeping mission would be? And two, don't you think that Canada should engage with UN partners? This is 6 years after the earthquake. Pitifully little has been achieved in reconstruction and stabilization and governance. Is it perhaps not time to shift from the military administration of Haiti to perhaps the United Nations Development Program?
There's no decision that have been announced about what we'll do in the future, but it's true that Canada is involved in Haiti since a long time. and we'll continue our solidarity with this country, and we want to see improvements, and we want to be sure that there will be an election that has been postponed. So we are not satisfied with the situation, but it does not convince us to withdraw. We want to be sure that taxpayers, Canadians, see indeed a result, because Canadians care about Haiti, but we want to see an improvement, and we're working with our allies to be sure that we'll have a collective effort that will provide results for the people of Haiti.
Okay. And a final question, and I see that you have increased contributions for non-proliferation, arms control, and disarmament, which obviously indicates that you like the program, that we will move forward. But on April the 19th, this committee had an opportunity to establish a subcommittee with the sole aim of inquiring into matters related to Canadians' arm exports and export permits. And in a recorded vote, every Liberal member of this committee voted against. I'm just wondering if you believe that you would be assisted by the analysis that such a study would have achieved.
I think this committee will have a lot of work to do. We just mentioned some. I will table we'll see when, the plan for Canada to be member of the Arms Trade Treaty. And let me tell you that it will be a lot of work for this committee to be sure that Canada, before to be a member of the treaty, to adhere to the treaty, Canada will make its homework about laws and regulations. So you will have plenty of work to do altogether. But the committee is master of these decisions, but I think you made the right decision to keep some time for the Arms Trade Treaty.
Thank you very much, Kent, and we'll go over to Mr. Oliver.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, ministers, for being available today. My question is for Minister Bibeau. The estimates show a total of just over $3.5 billion in grants and contributions for international development and humanitarian aid. I was wondering, what's the distinction between grants and contributions? And for the organizations that are being funded, how are they monitored, evaluated, and held accountable for the funding that they receive from Canadians?
So grants and contributions are governed by the transfer payment policy established by the Treasury Board. And the decision to award a grant or a contribution is based on the relative, first based on the activity that is being undertaken, but also by the risk assessment that we do and the fiduciary analysis that we do of each recipient. So up front, we evaluate every project based on the development results that are the development objectives of each project, and then we look at the financial capacity of the organization, and then we make a decision whether it's a grant or a contribution and what oversight and monitoring is in place. What we try and do with every recipient is to work with them up front so that proper controls are put in place to safeguard funds. We do have audits, and every one of our our contribution programs are subject to an evaluation to ensure that we have results achieved that we expect, but also that funds are managed in accordance with the principles that we establish right up front.
And just a second question. Development assistance is dispersed within guidelines in alignment with the government's development goals. Can you explain how the results of this funding are evaluated, and how will it affect future priorities and spending in terms of government priorities?
Well, as you know, we are actually going through this review, and we want to take decisions based on facts, and we are really into the deliverology process. So it's hard for me to answer clearly to your question now because we're really in this process, but we really take all of this very seriously. I will have much more to explain in next time.
Thank you very much.
Sorry.
Thank you very much. Now we'll go to the last round, and we'll go to Mr. Janis, please.
Mr. Chair, Minister Dion, Santayana said those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. I would be curious for your opinion of the American 2009 reset policy towards Russia. This was a policy of reset and increased engagement. Do you think that policy worked?
Oh, I don't know if you compare with which other policy. The relationship between Russia and the United States is key for the world. Even in the tougher times of the World War, these two countries were speaking together. Just to read the books of Kissinger, you will see. That's impossible to think that they will cut their channels. It would be awful for the world. So the policy that Canada followed in the last years would have been foolish if it would have been the United States. I don't think it would have been very wise for Canada, but it would have been foolish for the United States.
Minister, if I can just clarify, though, I mean, I don't believe that we should ever eliminate the possibility of, say, back channels with Russia. My question was specifically about the reset policy, which was a policy of communicating a reset in relations. And I mean, I guess you've answered it the way you want to. I want to ask you about the issue of human rights, though, because your government has decided to kill the work of, well, to kill the Office of Religious Freedom, and we've had that debate, and we probably won't get to agreement on that today. But certainly, at the same time, you've professed concern about religious, ethnic, and linguistic minorities. And during a debate we had on this in the House, you talked about your intention to continue this work, to expand this work, just to do it in a different way. That debate happened on March the 21st. We had a budget which didn't have any commitment for a new, let's say, human rights office or vehicle for delivering these things. The office was officially killed on March the 31st, and here we are on May the 5th. And despite claims about continuing to do this work, expanding this work, we have absolutely nothing in place. So we've lost time. We haven't heard an announcement. So I would like to know, and I think Canadians and especially people affected by the good work that Canada was doing would like to know, where's the plan? Where's the plan when it comes to international human rights? The Office of Religious Freedom is gone. We've seen no replacement, no announcement of replacement. So where's the plan, Minister? When will we see it?
Thank you very much, dear colleague. The Office of Religion was supposed to sunset.
I just want to clarify, because you said Office of Religion. It's the Office of Religious Freedom, which is something very different.
I agree with you. It was supposed to sunset, and what we have done then is it does not exist anymore, but all the programs that were planned are going ahead. Not one of them has been cut. It's true that we are working on a plan that will enhance our ability to protect human rights, including the freedom of religion around the world, to be sure that Canada will be more effective. And I understand that you want to see this plan yesterday, if it's possible, and it's coming. And I think you will be very impressed by the plan when it will get out.
Yeah. Minister, just to clarify, it wasn't yesterday that I wanted to see the plan. I think we should have had a plan in place when the previous structure was done away with. And you could have extended the previous structure by a month or 2 months if you wanted to. I have about a minute left, and I want to just get a question in for Minister Bibeau. The earthquake in Nepal was about 1 year ago, and my understanding was that around that time there was a specific plan in the context of our development assistance to ensure that there would be support for the Tibetan minority in Nepal as well. So a year later, I just wonder if you could update us in general on Canadian activities in Nepal, specifically whether support was given to the Tibetan minority to ensure that the Tibetan refugees in Nepal were included in terms of receiving relief.
Well, to be honest, okay, so I'll have to get back to you. I'm sorry, I don't have the information.
Oh, there it is right there.
Let's see. Alors, entre le 25 avril et
Between April 25th and May 15th, Canadians gave $51.7 million to help out in Nepal. This was very generous. That strengthens our ongoing commitment, and Nepal is rebuilding. In addition to this, Canada committed to pay $24.7 million to add to the construction fund. We will be building houses in rural areas. That's what I have as information.
We get back to the committee subsequently with information, we'd really appreciate it. Thank you.
Colleagues, I want to take this opportunity to first of all, thank both ministers for appearing before the committee. I very much appreciate both ministers' opening comments, in particular the comments relating to the importance Mr. Dion and Minister Bibeau place on the estimates. I think it's very important for us as a new government and as a new parliament to look at the estimates and the supplementary estimates that we'll have a chance to look at as an opportunity for us to get information on behalf of the Canadian people. And that really is about openness and transparency. And I want to thank you very much for this first opportunity to do so, and the invitation to come back sometime very soon when our supplementary estimates come. And lastly, everyone got a chance today, so that was good. That's very impressive and a good start to this relationship with these two very important ministers. So on behalf of the committee, thank you, and we'll take about a 5-minute recess, and then we'll come back in the second hour with the officials. So again, ministers, thank you very much. please take our seats. Being that it's Thursday afternoon, as you know, we try and keep a tight schedule. Many other meetings to do later on this afternoon. In front of us will be the officials from the Department of Foreign Affairs, International Trade, International Development. I would maybe ask Deputy Jean to introduce his colleagues, and then we'll get right into the questions, because I understand there'll be no opening comments by the officials, and we'll just get right into talking about the estimates further here for the next roughly 40 minutes. So I'll just start with Deputy Jean.
Thank you, Chair. As you know, we are what you could call a portfolio department with several vectors. I'm the Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs. I'm also the Deputy Head of the department, which means I'm responsible for the management of the department. My colleague, Peter Beam, is the Deputy Minister for International Development, so he's the Deputy Minister serving Minister Bibeau. You have with us, and I'll make his title a bit shorter, he's really our Chief Financial Officer in our ADM Corporate Services, if I translate that in layperson language. And Vince here is our ADM Strategic Policy. So the strategic policy are integrating all the various aspects of the department. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, and you did. And I understand Mr. Clement will be starting off the questions here this afternoon.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of the development aid budget, how much goes to China and how much goes to India?
So directly, we have no bilateral programs with either China or India, so we don't do anything
but in
directly.
terms of funding to NGOs that then in turn is spent in those countries, perhaps?
Yeah, I do have that. I just one of these binders somewhere. Sorry.
No worries. Don't worry.
4 years.
You have 4 years? Okay, sorry, I have it right here. Yeah.
I hope so.
So the answer to that is in the statistical report. So as Madame Bibeau in her remarks said that we have official development assistance, and so there's a portion of our assistance that is either will go through NGOs or some of the money that we get to multilateral organizations gets accounted for against countries. I have it here.
I can.
It's a good thing I have good binders.
Depending on how you take the definition of development, we do human rights with groups. We do human rights work in China. We do women empowerment. We do forced early marriage work in India with groups. So it depends how you define development. Like from a human rights perspective, we are active in some of those countries.
That's good to know. But I was more interested in economic development, those kinds of things.
Sorry.
Economic development.
There's very little, like our overall official development assistance from Canada to China is about $1.35 million. Right. And for India, it's 4.97, and that's a lot of work through NGOs, for example, like World Vision or other NGOs like that would do work there. There's certain health projects that are run by multilateral organizations such as the Global Fund to End AIDS, Tuberculosis, and Malaria that will spend a portion of what we give them as a country in those areas. And so that would be the development or official development assistance spending from Canada towards those two countries.
Right. Just in terms of, I guess we're into the world of sustainable development goals now, is that right? We're past the MDGs and we're on to the sustainable development goals. And just wondering, do you do an audit in terms of how that intersects with our bilateral, let's say, spending to make sure that you're trying to reduce overlap, is what I'm thinking, because obviously the Sustainable Development Goals is a multilateral project under the auspices of the United Nations, and then we've got our own bilateral. So is there an audit done to make sure that we don't duplicate?
Mr. Chair, perhaps I can answer that question. It goes back to, I think, the question that Mr. Bibeau fielded in the previous session in terms of funding for the Sustainable Development Goals. we haven't actually established priorities and actually identified specific activities in support of the Sustainable Development Goals. There are 17 goals altogether, as you know, 169 targets. We're not necessarily going to support every single goal, but at the end of the day, whatever we do will support the Sustainable Development Goals. You say it's under the UN auspices, but it's whatever we do, whether it's bilateral, multilateral, through NGOs, is in all likelihood going to support those goals, whether we end up supporting all 17 or 5 or 6, focusing on 5 or 6.
Kind of hard not to support those goals if you've got so many of them.
Pardon me?
It's kind of hard not to support those goals.
And again, we have to remember it's universal, so there's going to be a domestic side to this as well. But I guess I'm just trying to clarify that it's not sort of separate. I think anything that we do at the end of the day is going to be in support of sustainable development, and so that the review that's being conducted right now, if you look at the mandate letter that's been provided to Minister Bibeau, go away and conduct a review, consult Canadians, and as you do that, it's in support of Sustainable Development Goals. So the SDGs are like the international framework, and that Canada's development assistance, like everybody else's development assistance, will operate within that framework.
Right. I have a sort of a picayune question, just in terms of there's a lot of different. If we're looking at this table again on terms of assessed contributions to international organizations, there seems to be a lot. Well, not a lot, but several that have the word Commonwealth in them. There's the Commonwealth Secretariat, there's the Commonwealth Foundation, and Commonwealth Youth Program. So I'm just wondering, are those all run by the Commonwealth, or are they separate programs? How do they intersect with one another?
These are all separate programs. For example, the Commonwealth Youth Program supports youth development initiatives in Commonwealth countries, and it's designed to enhance Canada's relationship between those, between Canada and Commonwealth countries. The Commonwealth Foundation, for example, has a separate objective, and that's to contribute to civil society and governance within the members of the Commonwealth countries. So each of those assessed contributions for Commonwealth have distinct purposes and objectives.
So would I be wrong if I aggregated all of the line items that have Commonwealth in their name? I'd get a better understanding of how much we contribute to the Commonwealth. Is that right?
I think that's an indication of what we would contribute through our contributions to Commonwealth organizations. Right. That's correct.
Are there any other programs that we do apart from these that are not listed?
These are all of the programs where we contribute directly to the Commonwealth.
Thank you.
Mr. Clement, and I'll go to Mr. Sidhu, please.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the panel for coming out, clearing some air. According to the main estimate indicates a global affair, Canada is planning to grant more than $1.9 billion into multicultural societies, and in addition, this funding is in addition to Canada payment of assessed contribution of international organizations. My question is, spending that kind of money, in general, how does Global Affairs Canada evaluate the effectiveness of the money it's providing through these multicultural organizations?
So part of Canada works with a lot of multilateral organizations, especially on both the foreign policy and international development side. And there's a number of steps that we do to ensure that funding we provide is managed effectively and achieves value for money. If you go on the development side, for example, and you look at specific institutions, Canada often sits on the board of governors of those institutions to help set the strategic direction, to be part of the oversight mechanisms of those organizations, to examine the audit and inspection functions to make sure that funds are safeguarded. We do as well due diligence on all of those multilateral organizations as well. So that robust due diligence framework that was asked previously about how do we know our money is well spent applies for the same funds that we spend with multilateral organizations.
Sorry, go ahead.
we have a very robust evaluation function inside the department, in particular on the development side for looking at the work that we do with multilateral organizations. So they are assessed, they are looked at and examined in terms of their effectiveness and Canada's role in those organizations on a regular basis.
Have we increased this funding from previous years? This is the budget for 16-17. Did we always had that kind of money, a couple $2 billion for this purpose?
Multilateral assistance, I can look at what we had in 15-16. It's relatively stable. That breakdown of multilateral funding is relatively stable year over year. Right? And I think it's important to be mindful that a lot of the humanitarian interventions that we do are through multilateral organizations because they're our trusted partners. They're the partners that can respond the quickest. They have on-the-ground capacities to ensure that our aid goes where it needs to go as quickly as possible. So that's the reason why we have that amount, and it's been relatively stable over the years.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sido. Mr. Miller, for the next 4 minutes.
Gentlemen, thank you for coming. In the Global Affairs Canada report as planning priorities for 2016-17, there's a forecasted spending of for the 2015-2016 under international security and democratic development, an amount of $395,178,104. And then the same report indicates that planned spending for international security and democratic development in 2016-2017 was $237,901,526. Where does that difference come from?
Do you mind repeating those numbers as I look for my RPP?
Pardon me?
Repeat the numbers.
So I can repeat it, and if you don't have it in front of you, I'm glad you can get back to me. It's okay. The planning priorities on 2016-2017, there's a forecasted spending for the 2015-16 period for international security and democratic development of $395 million. And then the same report indicates planned spending for 2016-17 of $237 million.
There were variances because there were increases and decreases. So like, for example, one of the decrease was the $130 million for what used to be called START, GPSF, because it came through later on the supplementary estimates.
That's correct. And there's also in the planned spending, there are certain technical adjustments that we have. So in your main estimates don't include, for example, very technical transactions like the operating budget carry forward, for example. So we would estimate what that is and put that in planned spending because it's not appropriated at this time by Parliament, but in our spending plans we'll have an idea or an estimate of what that is, and we'll include that in our planned spending and other certain things like refunds for maternity and severance. So you'll often see a difference between main estimate spending and planned spending.
Okay, thank you. And then if you could just explain, perhaps it appears in the footnotes at times, that many of the performance targets are to obtain baseline information. And I just wanted to, if you could briefly explain what exactly that is.
Okay. So this probably goes back a little bit of a couple of years when the departments were amalgamated, and we established a new performance alignment architecture with new programs. And so when we did that, there are certain programs that we had that had ongoing performance metrics. When we did the new performance alignment architecture, there were new activities that we had where we had to create new performance measures and performance indicators. So in this current fiscal year, what we were doing is we're capturing the performance indicators to look at what the results are for that specific program, and then we will establish the baseline information, the baseline performance target, and then measure against that in subsequent years.
Thank you.
We'll go to Mr. Aubin. Aubin.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Merci, Messieurs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, gentlemen. People often say that politicians come and go, but civil servants remain. You've been here for a long time. Can one of you perhaps give me a ballpark figure of the budget cuts to the international assistance envelope between 2015 and 2016? Sorry, between 2010 and 2015, rather.
There were, in budget 2013, there were reductions to the international assistance envelope based on a program review of those. I do have that figure with me, and I will get to it in a second. It was around the $300 million figure overall.
Donc les...
If you look at this year's budget, there was also some money left over that was in the envelope. Okay, so the $256 million brings us about to where we were before, but the envelope hasn't really grown. It's really more like a break-even situation. Okay, between 2010 and 2015, do you know how much of the fund, how much of the International Assistance Fund was left unspent and went back into public coffers?
Look at this fiscal year is not really over, so the best numbers that we have there are the public accounts for the last fiscal year. So in 2014, from the international assistance envelope, the amount was very, very small. Overall, I think our public accounts lapse for our grants and contributions was about $59 million, and on the development side, that's $5 million. And we have processes in place to make sure that we don't exceed our appropriation. And so, again, on a budget of an overall grants and contributions budget for international development of almost $3 billion, having a small net lapse of $5 million was right on our target.
Merci. Fin de mes questions à caractère historique. J'arrive en...
Thank you. So that's the end of my historical questions, and now I'll come to 2016. You've said you're going to spend $586 million for the Global Peace and Security Fund, $450 million for the Global Peace and Security Fund, $156 for the policing program, policing and peacekeeping program, another one for the counterterrorism program. Is some of this going to be in the International Assistance Fund, and if so, do they meet the criteria of the International Development Financial Institutions Assistance Act?
Funding does come from the international assistance envelope. There are very strict criteria as to what is counted as official development assistance, and so we ensure that any spending that we report on through our OECD DAC report and also through the Official Development Accountability Assistance Act report meets those criteria. So they have to meet the criteria of alleviating poverty. So yes, while there is security spending and some of it is ODA-able, we build capacity in police forces, for example, some of that security spending is not, and we make sure through our financial oversight mechanisms that the reporting and what is counted as ODA is accurate.
Merci. Encore peu de temps.
We'll go to... Do I still have some time?
The amalgamation has come up. Thank you, first of all, for coming. The amalgamation has come up already, and I wanted to ask about that. Obviously, in 2013, CETA merged with DFATE and formed DFATD. How has Global Affairs Canada's, and is now called Global Affairs, obviously, how has the organizational structure been impacted, the governance framework? How has that changed since the 2013 amalgamation? And what challenges have been encountered to this point in implementing that amalgamation?
So from a structural standpoint, our structure is very much integrated. So like, for example, Vince Rigby, who's our ADM strategic policy, is responsible for strategic policy of all vectors, whether it's trade, foreign policy, or development. In the same way, our geographic bureaus, the Americas, Europe and Middle East, Asia Pacific, under the ADM for each of those, you have the people that do development and trade, and we've pushed even more the envelope on how far we integrate. We have created governance that integrate all the vectors. So we have an executive committee that has representation from everyone, but also under that, we have a policy committee where all policy discussions on either of the subjects, you've got representative, and they try to leverage the full potential of having an integrated department. Same thing for our program policy and some of our corporate One of the first actions that we did early in amalgamation as well was to change the role of our head of mission abroad and make them truly the head of integrator of the various vectors. And that has led to some real success. Like, for example, when I was in Ukraine last year, some of our likely-minded telling us that our agility to be able to respond using our tools, whether it's the stabilization tools that we just described or development assistance, being very, very performing. We have de-streamed all our executive cadre about a year and a half ago, and are encouraging people to take assignments in others. And we're now working on even more foundational work where we're going to try to establish what are the competencies that we have. In June, at the request of the previous minister, we had a third-party review where we were in amalgamation. And it was done by somebody who was a retired deputy minister many years ago, who does a lot of consulting work both in Canada and abroad, was a deputy minister who was involved in many structural changes like this. And he basically felt that we're very advanced, and like most exercises like this one, the biggest challenge that remained was on the cultural front, and we continue to work on this.
Let me add maybe just 2 points to what Danielle has said, and that is that the amalgamation effort is continuing. It's not a finite thing. It continues with deeper integration, depending on the needs of our various branches. The second point too is that we're not the only country in the world that's done that. So we check with some of our friends, the Nordic countries. The Netherlands have done this as well, just to see how their own amalgamation effort is going, and Australia has also done the same thing.
I'm interested very much in what you just said there, because the potential to learn from other states is something that really can help avoid mistakes being made, frankly. Is there anything in particular that we would point to from in your dealings with the Nordic countries, with Australia, with the Netherlands, that really stood out as being particularly important in terms of learning?
I think it would be efficiency, both in policy making and how resources are allocated, those two areas.
And they are technical questions, I suppose, but when Canadians hear these acronyms being thrown around that were so CETA, for example, now we don't have that anymore, it's important, I think, for Canadians to understand, A, that significant changes have been made, but what has been the impact of those changes, and hence the reasoning for the questions. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. That's the end of this round. We're now going to go to Mr. Sani.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming today. I have a couple of questions on main estimates. On one of the line items, you have Global Commerce Support Program, which I see from 2014 to 2015 has tripled to, well, not triple, almost doubled to 2016 to 2017. Can you explain what that program is? Yeah.
Sorry, just give me 2 seconds. Sorry, the Global Commerce Support Program.
Maybe you're talking about the Canada Export Program?
I'm going by the line item here in the main estimates. It says Global Commerce Support Program.
And is that 21 million by any chance?
No, it's 17.955 million.
Sorry, I don't have that. Let me just...
That's okay. You can provide that.
I will get back to you on that.
That's fine. There's another program here that I found interesting. It's the Canadian International Innovation Program that went almost doubled to 5.8 million.
So the Canadian the Innovation Program is a program it's a bilateral program that we have to support technology and science partnerships with Canada, Korea, China, India, and Israel. And so what we do is we partner small and medium-sized industries between Canada and these countries to spur innovation in those companies.
So you're predicting that from the 2014-2015 to the current fiscal year that expenditure will be doubled?
Yes.
And that's to increase and promote commercial interests?
That's correct.
Okay. And there's also another item here I found interesting was your contributions for the anti-crime capacity building program that almost doubled. I'm sorry, I don't mean to...
That's okay. Okay. So this is a program that we've had for a number of years, and it was renewed. As you see the renewal in these main estimates, and what this funding for is for us working with key partners and allies to contribute to slow migrant smuggling, especially by working with authorities in Southeast Asia, West Africa, providing technical assistance to police forces and other national organizations abroad, and to encourage those local authorities to have the processes that they need to have in place to prevent this. And I think we've had a lot of success as a government and as a country in doing this and providing training, and a lot of cooperation between governments and buying in for Canada's priorities on this.
Because it's doubled, is it more because our engagement in this file is more deeper, or is it because other countries have asked us, or is it because the issue has grown more profound?
I think it's actually one of the variants where it was in the budget last year and it's coming to Maine now. So it's not that it has increased, it's just that because it happened in budget, we're getting it into our main estimates this year.
Do I have another minute? Just a quick question. This is out of personal interest. It's a question about currency fluctuations. When you have the main estimates, these are all in Canadian dollars, but a lot of the programming that's done abroad, I'm assuming is in US dollars. Is that correct? Or could it be the currency of where you're doing the programming?
It's in local currency. So we manage 100 different currencies. So in those 170-something missions, we operate in over 100 currencies.
So does it come out as a wash in the end, or because with the currency fluctuations, there's going to be some places where you have more, where you've spent more, some places where you've spent less. So how do you accommodate for that fluctuation?
So what you see in these main estimates, and so there's a line that says compensation for currency fluctuations at missions abroad. And so we work with our colleagues at the Treasury Board Secretariat and Finance Canada to look at what the inflationary impacts and the currency impacts in all of those 100 currencies. And we look at what the operating costs are, and our main estimates are adjusted for both inflation and currency. And so the way the formula works is the currency dropped between September and January, and so you saw in supplementary estimates C an amount that was added to our reference levels. So what you see in these main estimates is what we knew what the known currency losses as of September 2015. So we make adjustments on an ongoing basis throughout the fiscal year. It's a model that, again, we use with Finance, Treasury Board, actually Statistics Canada helps with the inflation adjustment as well. But the way it works is when the currency decreases, you see funds flowing into our main estimates. When the currency appreciates, the funds flow out of our main estimate. So essentially, we're held harmless, right? So we don't gain on currency losses, or currency gains, and we don't lose on currency losses.
What would happen if, at the end of the year, for whatever reason, there was more currency losses? Who would backstop that? Does the Treasury Board bring the money into the system to backstop, to make sure the programming is done? Is that how it works?
So we work very closely with our colleagues at Treasury Board Secretariat, and especially, so this year was especially, this issue was very acute given what happened in January. And so we monitor through every individual mission has a good line of sight on their finances. We at headquarters work with our missions to balance those budgets. So our first action is to look at how do we manage within that, using the supplementary estimates process to provide sufficient funding based on the projections at the time. If in the event that there's a major shock, we do work with our Treasury Board officials to determine what the best course of action is so that we respect our parliamentary appropriations.
Because what Arun is describing is there's a bit of a lag time between the time we get the adjustment and what has been the impact. So we try to, we always make sure that we operate within a acceptable margin of risk. But if there was a sudden significant drop, then we would have to call on the...
What happens if the currency is stronger for that fiscal year? Where does that excess savings or that money go?
So what you'll see is at the end of the fiscal year, we will have an amount left over in our budget. So if the opposite happened this year, in January our currency appreciated and we had an excess amount, that amount is deducted from our reference levels in the following fiscal year. So again, that we don't gain or lose from currency.
Okay, thank you.
I'll go to Mr. Kent, please.
Very much, and I'd like to return to Haiti and the minister's commitment to ensure that Canadian aid and development dollars are well spent. And I think the Canadians can and were justifiably proud back in 2010 with Canada's whole-of-government response, along with other major participants in the disaster recovery operation. But since then, I think failure characterizes almost everything that's been done, other than, fortunately, keeping people alive, fed, and well medicined. I'm just wondering, and again, the military and policing commitment aside, I'm just wondering what the estimates specifically foresee for this year in Haiti, and other than basic survival, given that schooling has not achieved its targets, people are still living in slums, and all of this, admittedly, a result of political gridlock and no elections. But can Canadians be any better assured that their aid and development dollars are going to be more effective this year than they have for the last 6?
So maybe I can start, and my colleagues will continue. So first of all, I think it was spring last year when under the former government, Minister of International Cooperation renewed the development engagement to Haiti. There was an accountability framework that is part of it that shows very clearly that we have the safeguards in place. Secondly, as the minister has pointed out both here today and in the question period and other fora, we're not happy that there are the delays, and neither are our likely-minded partners who are trying to help Haiti in terms of the electoral process. And we're working together, and we're, keep encouraging the Haitian government and the elected officials to make sure that the Haitian people can get the governance that they deserve. So we are working very closely with likely-minded United States, other countries in the Americas who have lots of interest in Haiti as well, and European countries as well. On the specific numbers for Haiti, do you have the figure?
Well, we don't have the budget figure for this year. We're in the process. The fiscal year just started, and as the minister said, we're setting plans for that, for the budget for this year.
Any anticipated increases or decreases, or
it's too soon in the
process?
Too
soon to say?
We have built a hospital in Gonaïves. We've built roads. We have put in various oversight mechanisms. We are working very closely with the UN and our other partners, as Daniel has said, and it's a great topic of discussion among the donor community. So sort of all of us together.
Thanks. Coming back now to the grants for anti-crime capacity building program. After the coup in Honduras, Canada invested substantially in justice programs to bolster the justice system, to address human rights abuse, to advocate for rule of law and democracy. I'm just wondering, is a portion of this year's allocation in the estimates, does that provide for continued support in Honduras, where we've seen, unfortunately, a deterioration again of human rights?
So again, I'll give some time to Arun to come up with the numbers, but you're absolutely right that we wanted to support Honduras in moving in the right direction, and we have expressed our dismay at some of the drawbacks and the murders of Berto Cáceres and Elgon Garcia, and we've certainly told the Hondurans that we are concerned about these setbacks.
Right. And finally, the last little question I have, whoa, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I don't have the breakdown by country, but we can...
I'd be interested, the committee would be interested in knowing. And finally, a question in the 2014 report of the Auditor General recommended that the department, that then Foreign Affairs, take steps to identify opportunities for improving response time for global crises. I'm just wondering what has been achieved, and in general, how does the department or the sub-departments and within the department manage budget anticipation in standing ready, but at a prudent level?
This is actually one area where the amalgamation has been very helpful. Of course, when the OAG report came out, it was looking at 2-3 years ago. If you look at our time of response in the context of the Philippines typhoon, if you look at our response in the context of Nepal, in terms of announcing money, we were one of the first off the block. Again, recently in Honduras, our record on this has improved quite a bit, but we always have to aim to be doing better. So every time there is a response, we look at how well we've done and what different we could have done.
Is whole of government still a concept that is occasionally engaged, or have departments before Haiti were notorious for being somewhat siloed?
Indeed, it is a concept, and what happens when there is an international crisis is that we strike a task force almost immediately, any time of the day or night, and there are all departments who would be implicated are on that task force. So we have standard operating procedures, phone trees, email links, that sort of thing, and it's actually working quite well.
Thank you.
Mr. Kent, and we'll go to Mr. Oliver, please.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you for making yourselves available today. My questions are going to be around consular services and emergency management. So it's a $52 million line item, which I believe is an increase over last year's forecast in the 14-15 expenditures. Could you just outline quickly the factors that led to the increase in consular service?
I can. So there's a couple of reasons. One is, as I said before, that we have a new program alignment architecture. So what you saw in 14-15 was right after amalgamation, our best estimate of where the consular spending was happening across the organization. Over the course of the year, we refined those estimates, and so you see, so part of the increase is due to that. The other part of the increase, so of the increase, I think it's around almost $7 million. So $6 million is really identifying what our actual spending is. The rest of it is due to currency fluctuations for the expenses that we incur abroad.
Okay, thank you. And I believe we share with other countries, share consular services with Australia, Sweden, for example, where we might provide services to those nationalities and they would support Canadians. And I know in your performance indicators that's one of the things that you measure. I was just curious whether you see any variation. Like, is that shared consular service working? Are Canadians getting good service from other countries' consular?
Shared consular services works really well, particularly in terms of being able to ask them to serve Canadians where we're not present and us serving their citizens where they're not. It's been a very good experience for us, one where we are able to extend more immediate services in areas we're not located.
Okay, thanks. And last question. I know lots of people in my riding use the travel advice and advisories for both medical concerns, safety concerns, security. It's a new measure this year in terms of a performance indicator. How are you tracking, you're looking at scoring accuracy and the quality of those advisories, so how are you going to be tracking accuracy? How do you evaluate that measure?
So every time there are events, may be a threat, if it's may it be insecurity, may it be a natural disaster to a country where Canadians travel all over the world, we make an assessment and we determine whether or not the travel advisory needs to be determined. It's done within a matter of usually 24 hours because we always want to make sure that Canadians have the best possible information to make a judgment on whether or not they should travel.
So I understand that's how you set up the advisory, but how do you evaluate it post-fact to determine whether or not it was accurate? So you've set it up, you do it a year later, do you go back and do a retro, like how are you going to evaluate that performance criteria?
I don't know if we've done a formal evaluation of our travel advisory, but I can tell you that we will get when we have a travel advisory. So let's take a country where the threat of terrorism has increased, and maybe it's a country that is a major source destination for tourism from Canada. You will have a lot of representations from the country that maybe our travel advisory is too strict. We want the travel advisory to have the most accurate information possible for Canadians to make an informed decision and manage their risk.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go to Mr. Janis, please. Garnet?
Thank you. I wanted to just ask a little bit about Canada's foreign policy and any development assistance with respect to Turkey. Now, this is just in. I read in the news today that the Prime Minister in Turkey has resigned, Ahmed Davutoglu, and I'm sorry, I'm probably butchering the pronunciation. And this is viewed by many as sort of a further consolidation of Turkey in an authoritarian direction under Erdogan. Obviously, significant concerns about the direction in Turkey. A lot of criticism about the elections, expropriation of historic churches. Questions about many militants using Turkey as a route into Syria and Iraq. So, I wonder if you could comment on Canada's relationship with Turkey, and also ways we may be involved or could be involved in terms of democratic development or development assistance that would address these issues in terms of governance as well as minority rights.
Turkey is an important country. Turkey is a NATO partner. But as the minister has described here today, with all countries with whom we've engaged, sometimes there are things we like, sometimes there are things we like less. So we have been critical on some of the issues around freedom of journalism. I don't think we have any development assistance in Turkey. Not direct. No direct assistance. And like any other country in the world, with regards to the issue of transit, I think that the government of Turkey has been trying to work very closely with partners to try to see how they can, deter and prevent these kinds of transit. But that's a difficult situation.
Where we're working, if I may, working closely with Turkey is with respect to the processing of the Syrian refugees that have come in. So our allocation to the UNHCR, United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, a small portion of that 100 million, a small portion went to the UNHCR, but specifically for processing at the Turkish end and to help the Turkish authorities in that context.
Okay, just coming back to our engagement with, as you put it, aspects we like less, which is perhaps I would prefer stronger language, but of course it's up to you to describe things as you like. You talked about raising issues around freedom of journalists. Is Canada raising issues of minority rights, of ethnic and religious minorities in Turkey? Is that part of the agenda in addition to the concerns of journalists?
Like in any country around the world, we always monitor very closely the situation, and when we have concerns, we raise it, sometimes publicly, like we did in the freedom of expression, sometimes we raise it privately.
Okay, so would it be fair to infer from that we are not raising issues of minority or religious freedom in Turkey in the same way or at the same level as we're raising issues around freedom of the press? Would that be fair to say?
Preventing discrimination against minority is very much part of our foreign policy. So whenever we see these kinds of things that's discriminating against minorities, maybe religious or others, we take action, sometimes privately, sometimes publicly.
Okay. Like I asked a specific question there, but I guess we'll just move on to something else. The situation of the Uyghur Muslim community in China is very dire, and we have Ramadan approaching again this year, and if past years are any indication, Uyghur Muslims in China will not be able to mark that occasion in the way that their faith would dictate they do. So what is Canada's engagement with respect specifically to the situation of Uyghur Muslims in China?
So we have raised the issue of human rights and the rights of minorities, including Uyghur, with China on a number of occasions, and we will continue to do so.
Okay.
Your time is up. Mr. Fragascados.
I would just like to note, as far as minority rights in Turkey go, this is a very important issue. But under the previous government, the Kurds in Turkey were not given a great deal of attention by the Harper administration. So I note that for the record.
Okay, for the record. Colleagues, I think that that concludes our opportunity to speak to both Deputy Jean and Deputy Beam and his colleagues. And I want to thank you very much for your great presentations and answers to the questions. As you know, we will be calling you back with the supplementary estimates and very much appreciate all your hard work. And Mr. Jean, good luck with your new position. Thank you very much. Colleagues, we'll just take a couple seconds to let our witnesses go. Then I got one motion I'd like to, one report I'd like to move for us, and then we'll be completed. So in front of you, you'll notice that we have the third report of our Subcommittee on Agenda Procedures of the Standing Committee on Foreign Affairs and International Development, and it relates to the subcommittee that we met on May 3rd. The first is the list of priority witnesses and alternates outlined in the document prepared by the analysts for the committee study on the countries of focus for Canada's bilateral development assistance, and that needs to be agreed to. The second is that the news release for the study on the countries of focus for Canada's bilateral development assistance be agreed to. And the third, that the background information document prepared by the analysts for witnesses will appear in relation to the study on the countries of focus. Countries of focus for Canada's bilateral development assistance to be agreed to. And fourth and finally, that draft instructions for the report on women's peace and security be discussed by the committee on the 10th of May 2016. And so this is respectfully submitted, and I would like to have someone move, and we'll approve it. Mr. Kent? So moved. All in favor? Approved? All right, great. Thank you. Just for the committee's background information, as you recall, we had a discussion about the very question I think Mr. Kent was asking, and I was going to ask the same question. The countries of focus and what their individual budgets were. So as you know, I've written the minister on our behalf to get a breakdown of all those budgets for all the countries of focus and the countries that are partners, with the idea of helping us with our studies. So that's in the works, and hopefully we'll be getting that information very soon. So again, colleagues, thank you very much for your time and your effort, and we'll see you next week. Meeting adjourned.